I have the user comes forward that way.
Did you hear from her?
I've not. So they read it. Start.
Finish the packet.
Oh, it's done.
Perfect, because I'm also leaving.
I'll make sure.
I'll be here with you.
I'll make sure.
I'll be here with you, buddy.
Okay. I'll make sure we get into the executive session, plenty of time to have this discussion. If we need to, so.
Oh, she said she got correspondence from you that it was 1:30. She's had back, she's gonna be late.
This meeting was like, if it was 11:30.
So we can start without her.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Do I need to wait?
No, there you go.
Okay.
Council.
I need copies.
That was a rough.
Oh, that was. The one that is. Oh, okay. All right. Can we make,
So we've got an updated version.
Oh, you're fine.
you want me to make copies?
I got copies for.
Oh, you got-
Yeah.
If you want to stand up and move out,
Yes.
you replace these. Is everything?
Just.
Hey, Edgewood, what is July 9th? Tom?
It's wonderful. There's no other way to describe it. It's just, I hope you have good weather.
We've got late tea time, so that'll blow out.
Well, yeah. You won't be sorry.
Okay.
Well, you've heard from Mike before. Mike Davis is, boy, where do I start with your CV? FBO operator, international business person, wheat farmer, generally lots and lots of experience dealing with aviation. We thought Mr. Lewison will help us look anew at the airfield and consider a variety of things, including its level of services and its position and its future, the vision for it. Mike's recommendations were put together
in May.
And then speak, this is from the airport. Lend his wisdom and participate in the Q&A and discussion today.
So I'm really here to answer your questions. The the report that I gave out.
I
So-
have not.
You have
Put
not?
it on the record yet.
Okay,
I
so,
have now. I've got it here.
okay. So take your time reading that over. And the main thing, the reason why I'm here is to answer any questions that you may have of this airfield. Without question, this airfield is a special airfield that I have a lot of passion for. And it's because I'm in aviation as much as I am. I really do like this airfield. I think you have some opportunities as well as you have some challenges, and then hopefully I'll lay this out in a clear form for you and some of my recommendations. Some maybe not as aggressive as somebody like. I think and so I'm open it up to you as I possibly can.
I'll ask the dumb question.
Ask the question, Mike, or Colby.
Real quick, I'll shoot it. The reason I asked for Mike Davis to be here today is that I think we as a new board, two new board commissioners and relatively, we have a new vision, or we don't have a vision for the airport. And so I thought Mike would be enough the knowledge for us to get focus and some type of vision that we're going to go ahead and address for the next 20 years for investment, for the capital investment for Hood River. Mike's report, I think, was good, but it was too generic. And I think we need to have a little more hard-nosed answers and in-depth. We need to be informed as a board, what we can do, what's going on now, how you interpret it. You're a third party, you're not part of the board, part of the Board of Hood River. But anyway, what I would like to do, the president, would be talk to Mike candidly now about future, what he thinks of the existing situation, and then also maybe go into executive session with Mike Davis to ask Mike some questions about negotiation. Okay, so would you be willing to do that, Mike?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think this is a fact-finding day. I think it's important. Things have changed, or circumstances have changed up there. Some of our third-party investors have not materialized. So I personally want to get a better hold on what we're doing up there, where we're going, what's the next 20 years look like.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what today's about, is to get an understanding where we're going and why we're spending the money. And is there opportunities that we're not seeing? And I asked Scott Rainier, our intern, agent of record, to come down and just be able to answer any questions we have about what we can do for our liability insurance. Do we do this act on the airport, or will it be covered, or do we have to have another umbrella for our insurance? And I'll give you an example, Scott. What I was thinking is that as far as courtesy cars, brainstorm with Ben one day, but if we could go ahead and get several businesses to purchase the car, and we provide maintenance on it, and we provide the insurance on it, would our umbrella cover that? Those kinds of things. So I'm trying to think what we can do to stimulate, because for me as a pilot, you yourself, when you get to an airport, you're on the way to normal. And, I was thinking about maybe not wine tours, but vineyard tours, because everybody knows this room that from throttle, the bottle of the throttle is 8 hours, we can't drink. And 0.04 is our limit as a pilot. So we don't want to mark wine client. I knew I could overnight, so now we got lodging involved, and the pilot's not under the influence, potentially under the influence. And if the wife wants to fly somewhere, the pilot wants to go. And it's a happy situation, happy wife, you know. So that's my take. And those are the things I want to run by you, Scott, those things.
So insurance has to follow the ownership of the vehicle. So if Cathedral Ridge is going down the vehicle, they're going to be responsible.
And the decal was,
That's different. Than So you're saying that the port would own the vehicle,
that's correct.
the port would be responsible for insurance.
But no cash outlay for us, but yet, except for the insurance. And I'm trying to figure out how we can get people.
Well, there are mechanisms to insure those vehicles, and as you well know, probably both of you, a lot of the airports across the Northwest and the West have these cars available for people when they show up. And there is a way for them to be owned by the FBO or by the port and to be insured correctly.
The difference for us is that if you have a car for 24 hours, which is not heard of, you know, they give you a bicycle for 24 hours. Like sisters, you fly in there, you can mile across town. But what I'm trying to do is trying to figure out how we can draw general aviation that will put money back in the community and not cause a lot of noise, tag off the landings or there for 24 hours. So those are things we try to figure out during the day. So
Maybe you just summarize at an executive level, what was your recommendations for development of the property?
Well, one of the things that kind of showed probably the biggest peak on effort for revenue, okay, was already looking at putting the commercial hangar in, okay, this would be on the north side, okay, on the new entrance there. And in regards to that piece of property and the way the zoning is laid out and the way that the market was, we figured out that we see and confirmed the need for aviation-related industrial type commercial facilities. These are people who are not maintenance, but people who are in the field to find engineering spaces that's aviation related, okay? And those are the potential tenants who will pay the $2 a square, okay? So my recommendation on the onset was to and I call it an industrial building now, and then formulate those into sections so that we could then lease them to people like Trillium and et cetera, who are looking for spaces and growth. So that would fall into the FAA category that it has to be 50% or more aviation related, and also give us a higher degree of income. So as an income related versus just renting it leasing it as a hangar for 87 cents or whatever, and you could cut them up in 6,000 square feet. Don't put in aviation doors in it, because they're expensive, but frame it for that. So later on, if you needed to do that, you could do it. So that expense could be tenant improvement and not port outlays.
Where would you put it?
On the main road that goes past Wham, goes right down to the area. Do you have a picture of that, Chance? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, right there. So that's where the building was going to be looked at. And that's also the area out in front of it where I believe the new fuel dispensers. Out here in a little bit. But it needs to be see what kind of range that we went out and have that model. I can resend it to you. But it didn't take higher than just say, let's just rent it as a hangar. So my recommendation was to focus on that primarily because one of the main things that I was hired to do is look at revenue producing, because we're in the hole and we wanted it not to be in the hole, right? And we had a certain period of time to do that. So that was number one, okay, was to look at that as light industrial. And the second one was to look at the fuel. Okay, that was because it was already coming up that the existing fuel tanks were getting old and it wasn't modernized, okay, and it was all manual to measure things, do things, and whatnot. And then the new one was going to be really automated. So the concept there, and I looked at other, if you noticed in some of my reports, we looked at a number of airports across the nation and who was doing what and how they were doing it to produce the revenue. And one of the things that stood out at me is an opportunity for the port to actually take over the fuel concessions because it'd be 100% automated. In fact is, when this fuel tank gets in, you even have to do reports. They're automated, they're pumped into the cloud, you get it instantaneously, and it's very low labor intensity other than be in front of a computer to look it up. Yes, somebody's going to have to walk out there and tarmac once in a while and listen to the people on the phone, but the overhead on labor was relatively nothing, and we could absorb it. So, so what I didn't do though is the time frame on this study was a very short period of time. So there's some things that I was going to do, and either I was directed not to do it because the time frames or whatever. I did not look at cost of fuel. I didn't go out and interview distributors and all this sort of thing. Other than I just took the word of some of the other airports what they're doing.
Okay, so we get fuel, what else?
Okay, so but we have two things so far. One is to look at the industrial building. Two is fuel. Those are two primarily income. And the next thing I looked at was, okay, along with this is what are we really? What airfield is this? What are we doing? Okay. Are we a commercial airport? Is FedEx flying in here and delivering every day? Or what are we supporting? And really what we are is a community or regional airport. So it's either tenants, local businesses, or it's how to gather sort of a pilot's airport. And how do we draw people there? The more people we draw, the more fuel they're going to have. They're going to, and hopefully by that time we have maintenance. You know, we could have 1, 2, 3, many as we wanted to, maintenance facilities, and of course the FBO contracts are important because it fulfills an FAA requirement. But so then I looked at it and say, okay, what other kind of revenue can we produce through either bringing in other types of people? So that means, can we bring training in here, such as can we incorporate the college? How do we incorporate WHAM better? And those I were investigating with the knowledge that I could only go so far here before we get to the port. But if you look at it, those are the two primary things. The third is safety related. We looked at that. And also with the knowledge of, we really want to take a look at hangar space. And we want to investigate more about the certain grants and certain things that we can get to keep our costs down on producing hangars that we could lease. Okay. The other thing to do is, when we look at the north side, is not to get caught up into the only people can construct there is just us. We want to take a look at what the cost rate of return, ROI, is in regards to allowing other people to build their own hangars. So there is a potential there for other revenue. So the land is your revenue. So we got to look at all that, especially on the north side. On the south side, I look at that as where our development, more of the attractions, and how do we incorporate ourselves to bring in the pilots. So that's the third thing that we needed to look at. Don't have much detail on that because I didn't get to it in time enough, but that's something you need to consider. So the FBO contract, okay, I know that there's a lot of discussions over that. And what I looked at the end there was that the contract as itself allows us to have the flexibility to get something, a legal bounding agreement going, because we're backdoored, we're backlogged, we should have had this a while ago, et cetera, et cetera. And it conforms with what the FAA wants us to do. But more importantly, what it does for the port, it allows us modifications and allows us way outs. For an example, no, we didn't put in the contract, you're not going to have the fuel, we're going to take the fuel over. Why? Because those costs haven't been associated. I don't know when the new one's going to be really activated, and I didn't want us to be obligated to the existing system until that was there. So the avenue of the contract, I thought, was very healthy in giving the port and you the high flexibility of saying, okay, we protected ourselves, we got it going, but we have to understand as a group, I mean, everybody, that this is only a small step. As what Hobie brought out, what has to also happen is much more of a project-oriented detail about exactly the details of how this should look at, and then who's going to do it.
Let me interrupt that. I'm not done yet talking big picture instead of getting
Into the,
contracts.
but okay,
So if we go back to the vision,
yes.
as an example, how many takeoffs are there in a month on an average month here?
Do we have the data on that?
Are we talking 10? Are we talking 200? Are we talking 2,000?
We have to remember there's no automated systems in place here.
I would expect the FBO would have a pretty good feel.
Supposedly, but I haven't seen data on that. And I haven't seen data on the reports that they kept for fuel. Okay, there is a certain sense, we have to remember a couple things. So what I recognized early on was this was a private airport. It wasn't an FAA, it wasn't a public one, it was a private one. And as it's transitioned over to a public one, of which we're in, there's a lot of people around that still feel that this is a kind of the way private airports are looked at, okay? Accesses and whatnot, and the bottom line is there was no defined, you will report the 10th of every month and I'm going to have it on my desk. That I didn't see.
Okay, so Michael, do you know what the volume is or approximate volume of takeoffs and landings?
We don't have data.
I would think we kind of need that, that's kind of basic step.
Yes,
Base.
all of that is. Plus, you want to know exactly the fuel flow on this stuff.
Exactly.
And we also want to know the exact data on who's renting what tie down where, for how much, et cetera, across the board.
You'd also like to know volumes of maintenance.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
This
So-
data is not there. There is no data.
And Arrow won't give it to us?
I didn't say they wouldn't because I didn't interview them in that level. What I was interviewing TAC Arrow on is, what are you going to do? What is it that you, and what happens if I don't give you fuel? Will you still stay? What's going to happen? I did a more at that level, not where in the heck are the reports? Because I couldn't see any.
Well, I think that's basic data that if 10 years from now, one of the things we got to talk about, I think, is do we want that, whatever that number is, do we want it to grow?
Yes, correct.
Well, and what's a 20% growth equal? What's a 50% growth equal? Yeah. Yeah.
And where do we want it to go and how do we get it there? So all of that will be off of that baseline, no doubt about it. So when we looked at the previous contract and looked at the new contract has in there much more defined reporting, whereas the old
Yeah,
contract
I would tend to argue with you on that one.
okay, so
But we could talk about that.
we can talk about that because we need the data. We want to find out what takes off. And we also want to know about noise and all these other things too, that's related to What you would be concerned with, and that is the public voice, okay? I mean, we always will be working on that, okay? So what I think is that we're bringing the awareness of what we don't have. But I want you to take that and say, where do we go? Okay, so what I, in 30 days, or less than that, or whatever it was, I come to conclusion on was you have some opportunities. So let's look at this stuff way up here first, and let's get that going and manage it. And then you guys got to go to the next step. And then they go to the next step. Okay.
I get it, and I agree. But if you step back,
Yes.
we gotta talk about, what do we want this thing to be? Do we want it to be a destination airport?
Also,
In other words,
we may want to step back even further.
Yeah.
Understand what we're trying to do with the private sector, with Mark Floto, with Zach Arrow. And it's my understanding that's kind of gone away. Michael, agree that that's not really an option, but you might want an overview of what the plans were 5 years ago.
It's not gonna, it's a recast of the report.
Clarify that for the board.
I think that might be something we want to discuss in the executive session.
We're gonna actually have to focus. We're gonna have to focus.
But yeah, like I said, I think my biggest concern today is I want to find out conclusion, where we're at, like Mike saying, what kind of a destination. I don't want to compete against the Dallas. Myself personally, we're not the Dallas. The Dallas have got multiple runways, a lot of acreage, they're well set up by far. We're not going to be that big. We're going to find our niche. And I think what happened, my opinion, is that it's been kind of orphan. We are the parents of it, where kids are at, and we know how many touch and goes. And I disagree. I think you can go to the FBOs and you should be able to say, then give us the ballpark, figure how many touch and goes. Would you agree with that? Most SBO operators know that. So we've been telling you in the last 5 years, I think you have been telling you the truth. Because anybody is up there, they count, they look who's in and out. Planes flew up, they don't remember the plane that flew up. So for them to say they don't have any number, we don't have any information, we gotta do better work. We do our more homework.
to me, it sounds like we didn't ask for it. Or have we?
Well, I think I want to go to your question first. That's an important question. What do you want it to be? So some of it just is facts, right? Your one runway is just so long. It's not going to get any longer. So it can only provide a certain aircraft coming in there. You can't get a 737. You can't get even a Gulfstream in there, but you get a very light jet in there. Get some turboprops in there. That's it. That's it. So that, when you think about that, just the factual length of that runway, what you can put on, what can land there, then that tells you who your customer is.
I'd like to add to what Fred's doing, if I may, because you're absolutely correct. If you start there and then work towards that, because what you're going to find is that what we really are is a single engine light twin airport, airstrip. And that means that your clients are the people who are in it who wants to go someplace. So that, is it being destination? Probably. So I don't know how many times that when I was up in my FBO, we would take people up who wanted to go to a specific island just to go there for breakfast for a particular, restaurant, period. That's it. And so we have to look at it and say, what are we? That means we're going to service the airplanes who are here. That's number one, right? Because they are clients and they're using it. And that means maintenance and things and whatnot. But I think that Hobie also has we've been talking about this, is how do we get people from the airstrip down into our business area? okay? Because if we do that, then those business people are gonna say, I know where you are. And also they become friends of the airport. Then they're gonna recommend it, they're gonna do things, and also then we have a clientele that will come in for this destination, which is Hood River. Okay, so I think that's one area. There's also other areas that are very popular into smaller strips like us, and that is they usually have 1 or 2 events a year of fly-ins, and it's fun. Or an education event with maybe incorporating Wham.
Oh,
So-
it's like the Wham fly-in.
Exactly.
Once a year. I thought that was great.
And it is great, it is great. So so I think that that's your clientele. You're gonna bring people in to fly in for that, or fly in to destination in Hood River, because you got a lot to offer here.
Well, there's another possibility. If you look at the airport, just north of the airport, you see there's I don't know if it's possible, but there's an orchard out there. Do we want to push a residential airport themed program?
Well, you will only if it makes financial and it makes
I agree.
appropriate sense.
I gotta interject here. So if you're thinking of that orchard, that's EFU. So anytime you want to do a zoning change, which is, I'm not saying it can't be done, but probably Ben probably knows more than anyone how hard it is
That would be probably the hardest one.
You probably
to
will.
do.
Right in the wilderness.
What I'm trying to do is stretch us out a little bit,
No, and I,
make it a little bigger.
And I think also is that, I'm on the Wasco County Planning Commission, I have been for 10 years, so. And I understand the difficulties, but it also is that by incorporating in a positive sense of what you're trying to do, it may not be that, it may be something else. But all these things has to be said, and you have to say them, and you have to get them down, and you have to prioritize. But more importantly, you have an airstrip that has a beginning and end to the thing, okay? And you look around to your community and say, this is what we're selling. And what do you want that to look like here?
How does the general pilots feel about that airport?
Opie?
It's a tough one. It's constant crosswinds on 2-5, and, if I had my brothers, and I was just gonna be in the gorge, I would definitely go to Dallas, we have multiple opportunities for runways. But it's definitely a good strip, and I would not fly in there, length is not a factor in my aircraft, but, no, I think for the most part, we're very fortunate that we have our airstrip and where it's located, but it's a crosswind a factor. And the proximity to downtown is another issue that we have to deal with, and that's a negative, but yet you don't have an airport in downtown too.
How about other pilots? I mean,
Your
that's-
father flies in often, doesn't he? What does he think of it?
He enjoys flying in. He's teaching my nephew. Unfortunately, I'll never know how to fly.
You can fly with or fly anywhere.
Yeah,
Like gas.
I'm thinking, the runway is one thing. How about the infrastructure? What do the pilots think of the infrastructure?
It's limited. My envision is if we do this commercial building, what I'd like to see is that end there towards the end of it, towards the south, would be put into like someplace that they could fuel there, tie down, they can go in, they can relax, they can have a weather system that they could do. And it's inviting rather than to walk into a rundown building with no one to talk to,
That's it.
you know?
When I drove by there this morning and it looks tired.
It is tired. I walked in there because I didn't say anything to anybody what I was doing. I just walked in there because I wanted to find more about the cost of getting my, I don't have a tail wheel endorsement, okay? And so I stood there for probably 20 minutes or so before somebody came in. But if you look at the environment is not inviting to me. I would like to be able to fly into park, to walk in and go, this is cool. And I wanted to be able to have it feel inviting for the pilot to do some of the activities that's necessary for them to be good luck. And also, hey, I want to go find a place to eat. Where do I go? And how do I get there? And if I do drive out, and if I do drive in to give directions, it needs to be a lot easier to get here. Okay, it's because if you don't know this area and you're downtown, to find out where this FBO, where I am located, I'm gonna have somebody pick me up, is difficult.
So Hobie and I'm not familiar with airports, but so generally when someone flies in, if there's a courtesy car, is there a rental fee for that car?
Normally what it is that you put the amount of gas you use back in there a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a 2-hour window normally,
Uh-huh.
because it just, the size kind of tradition for 2 hours, but, I think there's opportunity to expand that and make it more inviting. 'Cause I know I would stop someplace for 24 hours at the car.
No doubt.
You know, and you can go see your kid's baseball or game, or whatever you want to do. But that's just one avenue, but, also we want to talk about is technology. How much do we incorporate technology? And as a pilot, is it nice to have someone in the FBO? Yeah, but I'm not sure that it's a necessity. Main thing I want is fuel, and there's a mechanic on property, it's another thing, but this technology advanced far enough, we go AI, and we have nobody in the FBO, and all our flight lessons are done online, and they meet at the FBO, or do we incorporate the college and a business degree, associate degree with business, and have them run the FBO and get the credit and do how to do a P&L and how to do spreadsheet and run the FBO for us in conjunction with the degree from the college or even the high school. And we got virtually free labor, but yet they're getting the experience of actually count money or run the Visa machine or in aviation, between jet fuel and.
And I hope you're bringing up some good thought processes that should be expanded upon. Since I finished here, I've been working with In Situ for the last 5 weeks to see how we can bring in the A&P program from out of the college, because we're going to have a FAA approved A&P program. And then what I'm looking at is how do A&P is it's a FAA certification to be able to work on your airplane.
Okay.
It's airplane mechanic, and A&P means airframe manpower time.
Got it.
Okay, so you have to be certified. It takes experience and a few years of work it's extensive. So the college is committed and to put in an A&P program with the FAA. We're working with the FAA to do that. Okay. Now that leads into other things, because what I'm looking at is the industrial area around us, around Hood River specifically. One's In Situ, and I got 6 people that says, "My God, you get this in here." I'm signing up. So, and then I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're right across the river, and it's an airport, okay, and Wham is here. I mean, there's some elements into this thing that we need to think about and experiment. Not experiment as much as it is plan and for short and long term type of arrangements. None of this is going to be tomorrow, guys. And that's what brings me right around to what you have to do today, or short term. This is a short term thing. Let's get this contract done, as far as I'm concerned, because it's short term, and we got to do it, and we can get out of it anytime. So you have loopholes that you can modify or terminate anytime. Thank you very much. The second thing is you got to look at your, go through from off the airstrip, right on from their home to the airstrip. Got to consider that. But I think that to take Hobie's thought process is that I think it should be a planning thing, and you can't, and maybe at a different time, whatever you guys want to do, and then really formulate this, and then put action plans on, make it a project, put tasks together, put action plans. Who's responsible? Who reports to who? And how it's done, because if you don't do that, next thing you know, we're going to be right back here talking about the same thing in another year.
So I'd like to interrogate this college AP program.
Sure.
Do you know if they're talking to the Dalles at all?
Yes, they are. They've talked to the Dowells and got an agreement to put in a hangar there, a big one. And that's going to be funded by the Dowells and Clickitat and, you know, the
So
college.
they're ahead of us, way ahead of us.
They are, but we have to remember is that I don't think this is enough. Because I think what we have here, if the college does what I want them to do, and that is, you can't just put up a sign and says, we're open for business and sit there and do nothing. Right? It just doesn't work in anything that we do. So what I'm after is that with the college is to say, we need to integrate very closely with every aviation business. And I mean, UAVs, fixed wing, who cares, the flies, this aviation, in this whole gorge. Because this is a Silicon Valley of UAVs, unmanned aircraft, no doubt. Trillium, for an example, just to give you an idea, is looking for 50 new employees, 50. They'll triple in size. And where are they? Hood River. Who's talked to them? Who knows what they need and how Hood River can help them expand and not go anyplace? I think they should be here on that airstrip. Personal, that's my personal feeling, and not that I talked to them. They came and did a presentation at the college and says, we need 50 people. Flatly said that. Bingo, to me, that's opportunities waiting to happen. But we have to have somebody, we have to have a program. It has to be detailed out. It has to have responsibilities. It has to have tasks. And who's going to do it? You know, who's going to be in the field talking to those guys? Who's going to be responsible for that? To get them here on Hood River. Who's going to be talking to the college? In the details, not enough here, but now, hey, the college knows where we are. You know, the part of the college is right here. It's full. Don't get me wrong. It's packed to the, well, that's good. Because if it's packed, then you need someplace else to go. So why not springboard that into to see what can we do as an airfield and as WHAM and whatnot to incorporate these things.
What's your feeling on the board's role? Mike has made some interesting points about who's going to do all this and coordinate it. Do you feel that we're going to have a bigger role in there's at the airport or a third party to the way it allows somebody to you're going to have to allocate employees, budget, you know, and within that role here. And the new structure is going to incorporate that one individual to focus on marina and the airport, or you're going to allocate one person to the airport.
There's a lot to that question. I would say that there's a lot of ways to deliver the services there. First of all, it's a determination of what's the level of services that's required. The best approach, at least the most efficient approach, has been the one we've used for a long time, which is to have an outside provider that has expertise in aviation that can manage a business or a series of businesses up there. So that's one model that has, I thought, worked fairly well with the caveats that we discussed. But I would say that if the court were to take on that, we would be the type of service, the level of services identified, then we would have to go into it with a business plan. We would have to prepare for that. Who's going to do it? How much is going to, what's the liability? What are the, what's the form of insurance? And I'm concerned about that approach simply because we're taking on a variety of tasks and activities that we're not. So we would, these are all questions. Would we contract with an aviation mechanic? Would we be responsible for mechanics that are working on planes? Is that our job that we take on? Are we responsible for scenic flights? Are we responsible for pilot training? Not that we can do it, but that we have to hire individuals that could do it and have solid contracts. Would we have a person up at the airfield in an airfield? And with that person or persons have the expertise required when there's several times. I have the FBO is right on. I get a text message, I get a phone call, I know exactly what's going on. There's eyes on the airfield. We have the expertise to surveil the airfield, the runway, the taxiway, the runway lights, and have someone that's knowledgeable enough to say, hey, there's a problem. We have someone that can issue the NOTAMs. So that the official notification of pilots that goes out, if there's anything going on there. We would have to acquire that expertise, or we would have to build it. Educate someone sufficient that we're confident that they can provide that eyes on the airfield and that expertise necessary for aviation related business and airfield. And so the last thing I'll say is that's a pathway that the court could pursue, but I would not do that quickly. I would do that over a length of time, eyes wide open, a solid business plan in place. And I would say that would take a year to do, and certainly you have to incorporate that in the next fiscal 23.
I think you're really optimistic in a year deal to set everybody up with the right experience and internal procedures to take that.
The point is, it's a long runway for good fun that we would need to trade to deal with it.
But, going back to comment about business plan, I don't believe I ever saw a business plan from Jack Arrow. I think they just took it over and they ran what they thought was appropriate. I didn't see a business plan. So if we're gonna do one, whoever's third party FBO operator should have one too, and present it to the board.
Could I push back on that a little bit? This is a little bit of background for commissioners of the FBO agreement that was in place for 5 years. Part of that was Classic Williams. They were purchased by Tech Aero. Part of that was Andy and Denny. So Tech Aero has an FBO agreement that effectively was a 5-year term that was extended for a year. And that's important and necessary for us to issue an RFQ or an RFP to select an FBO operator. This airport is not sufficient size or activity to support multiple FBOs. And they do provide really important eyes on the airfield for the port. The RFQ was issued. It goes out broadly. And there was one response. That was Tech Aero. No one else in the universe of FBOs was interested. And I know Ann said it around the country through professionals. So Tech Aero responds with their qualifications package. And in that, they articulate what it may not be a business plan, but they articulate the full level of services that they will provide, how it will be staffed, in a variety of detail about it. That response was then incorporated to the draft FBO agreement.
So it just begs the question, when you got only one response back, did anybody go back out and ask these folks, why didn't they respond? Was it something in the spec that they just didn't like? Is there something with the operation that they just don't like? Why was there not any competition?
I did not manage that. I don't know that detail, but I believe that the answer, roughly speaking, was it's not big enough, not enough activity. There isn't enough substance there to develop a business.
Yeah, I think, and you're probably right, but it would really be nice if somebody reached back and actually got that. That's your kind of your gut feel, and I'm not saying you're not right, but it would be very helpful to know that that's part of the input to where we want this thing to be. And one way we could do this is it's okay to be, I'm going to call it a sleepy community little airport. That's fine if that's what we want to be, but then we right size the expectation and our investment in it.
If I may, I can just interject a couple things. I want to support some of the things Michael said, what you said. One is that what we did, or even early on, is we looked around and tried to find similar size airports. Okay. And through that process, then just look at it and say, how are they set up? Because we do know a couple things. One is, or what we found is a couple things. One is you're not going to get an attraction of a lot of bids. And the reason why is you're not into a nearby metropolitan area to draw. Because they are like mom and pop businesses or serious businesses, and they're looking at profitability, the rate of return, okay? And where do we want to expand at? Now, there's some out there that are saying, I really want to be an FBO because this is what I want to do all my life, okay? But for the most part, they are small businesses. They're really focuses on the dime and nickels, okay? And if you read the article that I sent from the University of Michigan, I think it was, it actually talks about some of the mentalities of an FBO and how we as the ownership of the ground should relate with them, okay? And one of them is primarily, how do we help them become profitable? Okay, what do we do? How can we do that?
I
So,
think it's a great point. When I look at other airports around the country, I mean, you can have the mom and pops, or you can look at the Jackson Holes of the world,
that's right.
which has a longer runway and they fly corporate jets and
Yeah.
stuff in it. But are we thinking about marketing our mountain? You know, this could be a destination area but you're gonna compete against the Dalles,
Yes.
which has more access and so on for the airport.
And Mike, you come into this conclusion that basically he's going to say this, is that we don't know what we are yet. Okay, so we got to figure that out first, right? And that's more than this next few hours is going to be. Okay, that's a lot of head session, and we got to take it really serious, and we got to take it as a project with the process. Okay.
Let me interject something. The commission approved the strategic business plan. Strategic business plan is in your packet. It has a specific section on the airport. That section on the airport was developed with the advice and counsel and input of the airport advisory committee. This commission is set up to do those things. It was incorporated some of the recommendations from the noise committee that was organized to help deal with the noise issue. And it incorporated recommendations from Mike Davis. This is what the commission approved. This is the vision for the airport that you have adopted. If the commission wants to change that or modify that, absolutely. But I would encourage the commission to, since this is what the commission
I've
adopted,
glanced at this
you should
and I
consider that.
understand it.
Consider it.
But what we're talking about is something I think different than where you are in this document. I think it's, you know, we talked about this a couple months ago. What's a real vision for this airport, and not next year? I'm talking 15, 20 years from now. What do we want it to be? And that then guides us in making expenditures. And I still don't see that we've got a cohesive, succinct vision of what that airport's going to be.
We're sustainable.
I don't get it yet.
I'll just chime in. Do you want me to talk a little bit more about the context of?
I would defer to the commission.
No, it's fine time-wise. We're gonna go to executive session fairly soon. So we get a couple things we change it. I think the more we see
Just,
it right now.
just one more thought about what you have here is just the airport chapter of the strategic business plan. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of context that, you know, the airport, the marina, our real estate portfolio, and the waterfront recreation properties, none of the port's areas of operation are truly operating in isolation. And so within that context, the central concern of the Port of Hood River for the next at least 6 years is the replacement of the bridge. And so we are really at a transition point where you can think of the bridge as sort of the big sister of this family of businesses that has been benevolent and sharing and helping to achieve the status that it is now. And so really the challenging question for at least the next 5 years is, how do we determine the service level of all of our operations? How nice do we need our parks to be? How nice do we need our airport and our marina to be within the context of bridge replacement? Everything comes back to the effects of bridge replacement. It's the #1 concern. So while we can put together a business plan that would make the airport the best it possibly could be for its size and its volume of use and the impacts on the neighboring communities, a lot of these actions that are called out here are totally informed by anticipating there being no more bridge revenue in 6 to 8 years. So that's a really important contextual thing to keep in mind as we're talking about ramping up investments at the airport. We almost always have to touch base on bridge replacement.
So I think you bring up an extremely valuable point that we gotta be thinking on these other properties, and let's talk the airport. It's gotta be sustainable by itself. It
Correct.
cannot rely on the bridge.
And you kind of, you expect a little roller coaster where you invest a lot and then you ride that investment out. So that line graph in all of our operations really is affected again by that big sister of the bridge, right? Can we get over that initial investment hump? What are the other sources of income that we can use to finance these projects? What are the grants we're going after? What's the stimulus money we're going after to continue to achieve these new great things at the airport while also, cutting the purse strings, for a better, lack of a better word, with bridge subsidy.
Geneva, I agree with you, but we still have to have a vision
Mhm.
of what we want this airport to be.
Right.
Now, that vision may stretch out because of funds, that's okay.
Sure.
But we still, I have a tough time going out in the community and saying,
Right,
what does the airport want to be when it grows up?
right.
I still don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. So if I could take just a couple more minutes to go through the top level actions that we have in the plan and just give you a couple of anecdotes about why they're there. So many of them are direct result of Mike's work. So for our goals, number one is a high level of safety. Number two is a reputation as a welcoming and user-friendly airport. Commissioner Strike obviously is focused on that. One of the things that the AAC wanted us to think about was food and beverage, and to have the task of identifying and evaluating locations to enhance food and beverage and also observation decks. So it's more of a community space. We talked about this for the marina too. Sometimes people just want to watch what's going on at the activity and have a nice afternoon. And then we have achieved financial self-sustainability with a couple of actions there. One we're doing today, and it will be ongoing. That's monitor the FBO agreement and fueling operations to maximize port revenue while maintaining excellent customer service. Assess the ground lease options for private hangar and light industrial development. So those are on the list. Number 4 goal is a high level of services commensurate with the airport size and market. As Mike explained, we want to be good in our class. And the actions that are listed there are develop light industrial hangars to provide lease space for aviation related businesses, expand the mechanic services and capabilities, utilize a mechanic shop facility to enhance STEM and vocational training opportunities for high school students, and we should probably add community college. Evaluate, this is from the AAC, is evaluate locations to increase the number of tie down parking spots. Partner with the local for the car share service. We were talking about partnering with the local taxi and rideshare companies. And with the 4th cruise mobility project that has the e-car sharing station on the waterfront, we talked about considering locating one of those at the airport because it's all self-service. You rent a car, it's an e-car. Another goal, mutually supportive relationship with WAM. Growth and development of the aviation technology and light industrial businesses. And this came from both Mike and the AAC independently, and also the noise committee, was to evaluate and consider new technologies that provide useful data about airport operations and area impacts. So that's noise measurement technology, flight tracking technology, all of those things. Evaluating that is in the plan. Of course, supporting wildfire search and rescue, emergency response operations. Educational opportunities, as Mike just described, for the schools. So evaluate the potential public-private partnerships with WAM, Hood River Soaring, the high school, the college, and the community social clubs and aviation technology businesses to develop educational programs and activities, career pathways, and actual curricula. And then have a proactive and public engagement process. So under that umbrella is to continue to regularly convene the airport advisory committee to encourage volunteer participation, which I think is what Mike's speaking to when he's saying, who's going to do this, right? We need to really have a mature volunteer program where we understand each of our volunteers' level of expertise in what areas and make sure we're assigning the right people to the right
Exactly.
job. Prepare and implement an outreach strategy to enhance communication and address concerns from area residents about airport operations, particularly noise impacts. And Chris Robeck is here and she can speak to that. We have a form on our website that registers noise complaints, but the technology that we have is pretty limited on what do you do about it? You know, how can you address any particular plane that keeps flying right over your house over and over again really well. And then 10, this comes straight from Ms. Roebuck during an airport advisory committee meeting, was that have the port commit to use of data-informed decisions that manage the impact of aircraft noise generated by the airport. So not so much, I mean, noise is subjective. It is a different sound one house next to the other. So how can we make sure that that's data-informed decision-making? And the action there is to work with aviation technology companies to develop operating protocols that are aligned with noise mitigation community standards. So that's a real relationship building, dealing with the pattern flights primarily. So I just wanted to make sure, and then there's a list of capital investments and a target date, the target funding for that, priority level, and the dollar amount for each one. And so I just wanted to provide that context. So we have this call for a real nice, robust plan business model, but that's got to fit into the jigsaw puzzle of the port's strategic plan and that central concern of bridge replacement. So that's, I just wanted to provide that background there.
You know, I'd like to, this is a great list, by the way. I just want to add a couple things on noise, okay? Because one of the things that was brought up early on was the cost of monitoring noise. Well, that has come down considerably. Things have changed, okay? I mean, so I did some research on how to monitor noise automatedly, et cetera, and Hobie has also looked at how do we implant technology, okay? And this is a great opportunity, I think, to demonstrate to the community. It's not that we can do a lot of things about noise. Noise is relevant, but we need to have the public be aware that we're aware of their concerns and we're doing something that's monitoring, okay? Versus, yes, I know, I'll talk to somebody and that's it, and it gives it again. So what we need to do, and every airport, by the way, has this same problem. And this is not going away, but I think that we can show the public that we're supporting them through using technology, what's available, to monitor, to actually show what's going on. So I think we can get a couple of positiveness by doing some actions in regards to those.
We need a vision of where we want to be. That's not going to, but good. We want to establish a proper study, some kind of survey. This is the process. Start that process as it relates to airport specifically, or do we want to discuss different ways to do the things that we want to do out there, which is not getting fine. We do have some immediate business we need to take care of. Now that way, we're trying to properly discuss it. So I'd like to do is know what you think about getting that vision on defined.
I think that we need to have a vision defined. I think in the short term, there is data applications we could implement along with staff going with vision that we can actually start tracking some data as well. So I think, I know that we've been looking at some different software programs and some different things, and I think the sooner we can get those implemented, so then we actually have some data on how many takeoffs and landings are happening and what's going on.
I think one crucial point is it going to be in-house or third party?
Yeah, most of the comments on that one, I mean, we have to be executive session,
Yeah.
which we want to make sure we get.
I think once we decide that,
Then,
then everything else falls in place.
okay.
You know,
I would suggest that right now, I don't think we should go spend money on software. I think there's data, I'll bet you the FBO has. We just need to go get it. And some of the basic stuff like takeoffs, landings, fuel usage, how many hours of maintenance do they provide a month, on an average month? You know, tie down space, they gotta know all of this, because they're making money.
Why don't we have staff request what they do have?
Yes.
So we talked about some other things in a minute, conflict regarding contract. Let's have that.
Yeah.
You got it. Start there.
Yeah, and then maybe we have another somewhat session like this to recapture, let us think about it, and then develop a plan forward.
I don't think commissioners should request me for it. Staff should request these meetings. This is the worst asset we have, so for this way, like I said, the orphan up there, but yeah.
Anything else? Anybody wants to touch on before we go to the executive session? We've already covered. I think discussing current operations. Regarding the bench and regarding that, we're kind of just be rehashing what we've already heard in the past, unless anyone needs a formal presentation on that. It's just repetitive. So what I think we're gonna do is skip into executive session now and then return before 3 o'clock. So.
Talk faster.
That's what we're gonna do. So right now we're gonna recess the regular session and move into executive session under ORS 1926602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing bodies to conduct real estate negotiations, and 6602E to consider information records that are exempt by law from public inspection.